So that high turnout in those Helene-affected counties now could be making a difference in an election where quite literally every vote counts. But those same areas had to deal with the flood of misinformation and also had to find new locations for voting precincts. So Queen City News anchor Derek Dellinger live right now at a voting precinct in West Charlotte today. So Derek, you had a chance to be able to speak with a FEMA administrator about some of this. So what did she say?
Well, she made a point of saying largely they stay out of elections. It's largely a local and state operation. They will only comment if needed. But she told us those areas are still dealing with all that damage, and also noted that they are still dealing with a ton of misinformation that is still happening more than a month on.
Ahead of Tuesday, preparations are underway for everyone that can to vote, and in some areas it may be looking different. We know in some mountain counties still dealing with damage from Helene, they've had to change voting precinct locations, and they saw an influx of early voters. In the period that ended this past Saturday, mountain counties and those that suffered a variety of effects from the storm had high turnout. In some cases, nearly 2/3 of some counties voting.
I think certainly making the effort, the boards of elections across the 25 counties, the voters have responded.
Michael Bitzer is a political science professor at Catawba College. He's also been watching the numbers, which do lean Republican, but may also be shaded by perceptions of the federal response to Helene in those areas.
I think the power of what we have seen as a level of competitiveness in North Carolina really speaks to the interest in this election.
Misinformation and misperceptions are something that FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell says they've been approaching head-on in those affected areas. She was in Charlotte Monday touring a disaster recovery center and says people are still coming in as the recovery process enters a new phase, as addressing false rumors also enters a new phase too.
The beginning of this event, it was at a level I've never seen before. We still see some of it here and there. We still see some different rhetoric about FEMA hasn't been on the ground. And having me come explain exactly what our role is, I think makes a big difference.
To that end, we did ask if FEMA is actually helping out with elections in those affected counties. Administrator Criswell told us no, at least nothing direct. They're leaving it up to the local and state agencies, coming in only if asked.
But if they had a need for some assistance as it relates to the storm damage, then we would be able to support either bringing in a temporary facility or a generator or something.
Many of the counties hit by Helene are smaller counties in terms of both size and population. In fact, in total, many of them combined don't equate to Mecklenburg County's population. But that doesn't mean their voice will be any less significant.
This is going to be an election decided on the knife's edge. And if voters are thinking, I missed early voting, I didn't get an absentee by mail, should I really show up to vote on election day? Make the effort, because literally in some contest, we could see a very narrow margin of victory being determined by ultimately who shows up.
And it is worth noting here that Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has also urged people to early vote, so there's no telling as to how that could be affecting the overall numbers. We should mention, though, that the highest number as far as voter turnout percentage in our viewing area is actually in Alexander County. They had just a little over 65%. There are similar, though somewhat smaller numbers in both Caldwell and in Lincoln counties, too. Live in West Charlotte, Derek Dellinger, Queen City News.